Whoa!
Welcome to the What's Our Verdict podcast, where we fashion ourselves cinematic judge and jury. My name is JJ Crowder. I'm here with my co-host, Mattson,
Better read than dead.
and Alec Burgess.
Let's get it.
We appreciate you tuning in. Go ahead and hit that follow, subscribe, like, bell notification button. Tell a friend about us. Tell
Two friends about us.
two friends.
Maybe not after this movie. Maybe
Oh
the next
my
one.
gosh.
Oh, it's gonna be a fun podcast. I can feel it. So we're let's jump right in. We're reviewing The Great Dictator. It was released March 7th, 1941, even though it was made in 1940, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. It was written and directed by Charlie Chaplin. It stars Charlie Chaplin, Paulette Goddard, Jack Oakey, Reginald Gardner, Henry Daniel, Billy Gilbert, Grace Hale, Carter DeHaven, Maurice Moscovich, and Emma Dunn. I love this. Dictator Adenoid Hynkel tries to expand his empire while a poor Jewish barber tries to avoid persecution from Hynkel's regime. What a fun movie. And Mattson, if you're going to use your band catchphrase, because we are on YouTube now, it's Hail Hynkel. Okay.
Hal Hinkle.
There you go. Because I don't want to make on the podcast, I wouldn't care, but
Hal Hinkle.
Mad at us. So I needed to rein him in because I knew it was coming. So I was going to get that out of the way first. It's Hail Hinkle. If you want to know how he got the catchphrase, go listen to our Jojo Rabbit
Hal
episode.
Hinkle. Hinkelheimer Smith. His name. Yeah. So wait, say that part. The part. This movie was made in 1940 or 41,
1940.
but it wasn't released till 48.
41.
41. I thought it was gonna be. They made this during all this. Wow.
Yeah, they made it at the beginning
a
of World War
satire.
I. I guess it was a couple years into
Well,
World War
yes,
I.
Alec, it's a horrible I caught that once. Charlie
Horrible satire.
So let's
What
talk
is
about-
wrong with you?
Let's talk about why it took so long. So when Chaplin made this, it was early in the war. So the whole Holocaust piece hadn't started yet. There was the persecution of the Jewish people, and there were concentration camps, obviously, but the actual genocide of the Jewish people hadn't begun. And everybody looked at, in the United States and especially Great Britain, which is where he's from, were very much on the let's just leave the man alone. Okay, we're not involved. He's an idiot. Eventually he's going to peter out. It's not going to be an issue, so we're just going to leave him alone. And in fact, they threatened Chaplin with, don't make this movie. We won't release it anywhere. Okay. So he being Chaplin was like, fuck you guys, I'm making this movie. So he made the movie, and it's all about, and this is what part of what's genius of this movie is, if he had waited 2 more years or even another year, he couldn't have made this movie, because at that point, the actual Holocaust portion of World War II would have begun. And you can't make this movie based on that, right? Like, it doesn't work. But the other genius piece of it is to be honest with you, and the part that I love the most about this movie is your Hynkel, and then you have obviously Mussolini's representation. Chaplin on the nose with dictators. Like, how do you argue with the fact? And that's why it's such good satire. Blows my mind that you say it's bad satire, because it's hilariously accurate with the real problems surrounding actual dictators. Is they're morons. They're idiots. They just tend to be charismatic, because at the end of the day, Hitler was a genius when it came to getting people on his side. He had a whole nation do the worst atrocities that our world has ever seen on the scale that it was seen, and people followed him and they did it. And he did it all in order to keep people blinded to the fact that he was a terrible politician and he wasn't a great leader. He just was likable, and he gave them this horrible thing to blame all their problems on, to avoid. And there was a joke within the movie early on where he's like, we need to be more violent towards the Jews, because then, they'll forget their
about being
stomach.
hungry.
Yeah, they'll forget that they're hungry. And I think that's what. Look, is this movie probably a little too long? Yeah, but the content of the movie for when it was made and how it was made, the fact that he was willing to stand in and go to, at the time, one of the most powerful leaders in the world in the middle of a world war, the start of a war, and say, fuck you, you're an idiot. Like, that's what made Chaplin so genius.
I want to hear why Mattson thinks this is bad satire.
Maybe bad satire is a bad phrase.
No,
This
no,
is
no,
a
no.
boring movie.
Oh my gosh.
Alec, it's a bunch of 1 to 2 minute bits of Chaplin having problems with a cannon, to can't fly in an airplane, to crashing an airplane, to forgetting all these little bits.
Oh
Just
my
it's
gosh. Have you ever seen a Charlie Chaplin film?
Yeah, and I don't want to see another because I don't like movies like that. We have progressed to one, color.
Guy,
Two, we've progressed to dialogue and plot that is intriguing to me. It was so boring.
It's almost like you're not even watching the movie. Do you know how coordinated Chaplin is?
I don't need to know.
Incredibly coordinated.
He's just not my cup of tea.
All of these stunts, well, not your cup of tea, but you said it was bad.
Incredibly coordinated on all these stunts. He pulls a string and then falls on his face. I could do that, but is he really good?
No, you cannot do it like he can do it.
No, I'd agree. I can't do it like he could do it, but I'm good. I don't need to see. I'm glad we've progressed in movie making to
we
something
wouldn't
that,
without Charles Chaplin.
and we have built on his shoulders, but thank goodness, may he rest in peace.
Oh my gosh, bad satire.
It's just this movie was so boring to me that I started to, 1, fall asleep, and 2, question, should I watch the end of this movie or should I just fake that I did?
Oh, well, I'm glad that you watched it because it also has one of the greatest speeches ever written. And Curse,
was it real German that they were saying? Like some
of it was.
Because some of it, I was like, is this made up? But then I was like, that's talented to make that much gibberish sound like German. And I'll give him that, because if that's part of it, that's funny and that's hard to do.
Sauerkraut
and it was Tomanian. Get it right. it was Tomanian.
Yes, it's not.
Which is a mix of German and some other Slavic languages, in case you're wondering.
I loved it. But yeah, a lot of it was ad-libbed and him just kind of going off, sounding like with a German accent type thing. Another interesting topic. Did you know this is the last time he ever wore the mustache? Because that was a signature for him. And in that part where he goes on the date with Hannah, that is his signature look for most of his career.
The tramp.
Yeah,
they get rid of it after.
He never wore it again after this movie because of Hynkel.
Yeah, because of Hynkel and who Hynkel represented. I'm assuming it's probably time to put that to bed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. He never wore the mustache again after this movie. So,
well, that makes this an iconic movie because that is how Chaplin looks. I mean,
and I don't know, like, if you don't know a lot about Chaplin's story, so Robert Downey Jr. made a movie called Chaplin where he played Charlie Chaplin. And if you don't know Chaplin's story, this guy was he was a tortured genius, idiot savant. Like, the guy he is a genius. He was a genius. But he went through a lot of weird shit, like, and ended up, where was it, in like Switzerland or something? Because both the countries that he lived in said, "Yeah, we don't want you here anymore."
Yeah, he got caught up in McCarthyism.
McCarthyism, yeah.
Called him a communist and kicked out. Died in exile.
Yeah. They tried to let him back in the States. I think he got cleared to be able to come back in, but he said, "Fuck off, I don't want to come."
Yeah,
and ended up wherever it was, Switzerland or somewhere in the Norwegian area, if I remember right. He died. But his granddaughter is getting pretty famous. She was in Game of Thrones. She's got another movie that's coming out. Una Chaplin is her name. She's good. She was in something I watched recently, but I think for me, like, look, I don't like, one thing that I struggle with, because I like this movie a lot. In fact, I forget how funny it is to me until I watch it again, which I don't do very often, but I was glad we did it because I was laughing my ass off watching it again. But what I don't get into is I wasn't as enjoyable with silent films, because I don't even like watching. Casey loves to watch foreign films, And I can't do it because I have a hard time reading captions if I don't understand the language. It's completely on me. I'm not judging foreign films. They make great foreign films. It's a me thing. I get bored and I get distracted because I'm having to read the dialogue and I don't understand it. It's the same with silent films. Like if I have to read, like I love the actions going on, especially Chaplin. The guy physically comedian, like you talked about, Alec. It's people underestimate how difficult it is to do that shit. Like early on in the film when Hannah smacks these guys with the pans and he's walking
going
up and down the
down,
street, like wobbling and shit.
But
like
he's
that's
staring straight ahead.
Yeah, that's tough. And then like the moment, like when the stormtroopers come to the house and like he goes to lean on the wall and misses and like hits that shit hurts because you don't like kind of hit that stuff. Like to do that really, you have to purposefully miss and let yourself hit. And so that kind of physical comedy just cracks me up. And then like the scene where he's Hynkel and he's doing the dance with the balloon globe, like it's so silly looking, but I'm laughing because you think about Hynkel, who the character's based off of, and you're like, I could see that weird little fucker doing shit like this.
And it's the biggest middle finger because this is like Hynkel, or real life Hynkel, I'll say, is not someone you made fun of.
No.
Like not if you were interested in continuing to live.
Yeah.
And dictators tend to be that way, right? You do not mess with them. But like just pull out all the stops. And so that's why I'm okay with the weird stuff, because it's a satire. It's made to really this movie is made for one person.
Yeah.
And it's in just one giant roast to that person.
Maybe two when
1.5.
Yeah, that's fair. Because I mean, he wouldn't have been Napolini wouldn't have been anybody if it weren't for, not at least on the level that he did become, if it weren't for Hynkel. But I just love that they called like bacteria.
Yeah.
Like it's
Dr. Bacteria.
Yeah, they're freaking, and they kept calling each other like dictator buddies. Like it's so funny. And then the one-upmanship between the two dictators, like, and the freaking barber's chairs. I die every time when they go like 8 feet in the air. I love it.
When this movie starts out, like as soon as I know, because I absolutely love this movie. The thing that gets me every time is when they're flying in the plane.
Oh yeah,
they go upside down. His pocket watch,
the watch,
puts it down and up again, and puts it back down. And then goes for the water, and then falls out. Give me the stick. Impossible. Impossible.
Well, and I love freaking Schultz's reaction when the water. He's like, I can't reach. Faint. I can't reach. And he's like, oh, it's all gone.
And I didn't laugh a single time.
Because you have no soul and you don't like comedy.
That's fair. The red hair took your soul.
It's just not true. I don't know. It's just not funny to me.
Yeah.
It's so it's so unfunny.
Movies, Mattson? I'm concerned.
It's so unfunny to me that this is one of those podcasts when it's so bad and boring that I'm not even mad. I have like nothing to say.
Oh goodness.
It didn't make me feel strong enough to like, I put this, it's like I was watching this movie, but I put it in like the back of my brain as I was watching it, and I was like, please just let me get to the end of this. And I knew that Alec and I knew JJ would laugh at some parts, and yeah, I'm sorry, listeners, that you had to listen to this, because this is just not a real Ginge movie.
That's true. Like, and I knew when I put it on the list and Charles voted for it, I was like, ruh-roh. I was like, Mattson's gonna hate this one, because
we all have movies we like and we don't like, and I'm consistently on brand. If it's black and white, we're already strike one. If it's slapstick comedy from the 40s, probably strike two, from what I'm finding out. I'm not sure what strike three. Strike three is usually a movie that Alec likes. So,
my gosh,
put those three together. What do you get?
You mean the greatest movies ever made? Is that what you're talking about?
We've moved on.
not for the better.
You're telling
Sometimes
me,
that's very true.
like, I mean, I wouldn't watch Pink Flamingo over this movie. That's
Well,
barometer there.
That's because that's gutter trash.
At least this movie was well
Literally.
acted and had
Yes,
people that weren't
because it had the
repulsive to look
greatest
at.
actor of all time in there.
That's probably true.
No.
Yeah. Oh
Charlie
yeah.
Chaplin
No, Charlie Chaplin is outrageous.
Is the GOAT.
Yeah, he is the GOAT.
Well, just like the GOAT debate between LeBron James and Michael Jordan, I respect a different era than the original era. So I guess in this terms, I'm an LBJ fan and not an MJ fan, which feels horrible to say because I feel the other way.
Just like in that argument, it doesn't
wrong.
matter what generation.
In Chaplin's generation,
Chaplin would be just as good today as he was then, because that's the difference. Is everybody, just like everybody argues LeBron? Come on, dude. You think Jordan wouldn't adapt to today's basketball? Of course he would. That's how good he was.
I'm not saying
Chaplin would adapt, and he'd be better than everybody.
Do you take what Chaplin was good at with the slapstick comedy, the body acting, and he probably clearly was a pretty good just actor in general? He probably would be amazing today, but you know what? Unfortunately, he's stuck in 4:3 aspect ratio and black and white.
There it is.
He's predominantly in silent films, and I could just give a crap because I'm not going to see him in a 21st century movie when he would probably kick butt. But unfortunately, I get to watch other actors like Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks,
Tom Cruise,
Denzel Washington. Tom Cruise.
That's who you went with.
Well, you know, is
The
Mission
other two I can get
Impossible
behind.
in Top Gun entertaining? Yes. Is he like a phenomenal actor? No, he's good at running though. Which, if we're talking about physical acting,
I don't want to watch
Charlie
Chaplin. I want to watch Tom Cruise.
Hey,
you know what? If
I
we
will
pulled
say-
America, they would say yes. We're gonna watch Tom Cruise movies over Chaplin. Yes. You forget that the younger generation is taking precedent. All the oldie farts are dying.
Wow. That's not entirely true. There's still 5 generations in the world, and I hate to break it to you, but if you add them all up,
yeah, but the old farts, they won't vote because they're not going to be a TikTok or Instagram to fill out our poll.
Well, if you're going by the TikTok generation and the people
We're
that
gonna
are on
have
TikTok,
to send them
everybody's fucked.
a mail-in ballot, and then we'll have a proper. We'll get all the old people, and the young people won't know how to mail it in because they never sent something in the mail. So problems right there.
Wow.
Just
This guy. I will say, one of the things that I love about Chaplin is the fact that you have the slapstick, even right up to the end. And then right at the end, you put him in front of some microphones and he gives this speech that at the end of the day is what really he probably made this movie to do, was to give that speech. Because to say, look, we're not on this world to be shitty to each other. We're not on this world to feed your ego. The idea is, and I love that the speech was to the soldiers of the world, right? It wasn't, the movie was to make fun of and to show the ridiculousness of the dictators and the shitty leaders of the world, and probably even the ones that weren't dictators, but were unwilling to make an enemy of this terrible human being. And so who does he appeal to is the everyman, right? The soldier, who even amongst Hynkel's army, there were a lot that didn't like what they were doing in the normal army, right? So it's one of those things that, and that speech, like, still to this day, like, chokes me up, because it's just like, even today it's relevant. Like, the things that he is saying are so relevant in that speech. And that's why I get pissed, like, fucking Roger Ebert's dumbass, like, shits on that speech because he's like, it doesn't fit with a comedy. Go fuck yourself. It's the whole point of this movie, is to show that these leaders are ridiculous, and it's up to us as the people. We should take charge of who is in charge, because that's the way the world was built. And yet we still let the few control the many in so many cases. So it's, in my opinion, if not the greatest, it's one of the greatest speeches in all of cinema, period. Like, it's amazing, that speech.
without a doubt.
Yeah. And then the fact that he can go from silly and stupid and making fun to a very serious, very impassioned, very touching, moving speech is impressive. That's, to me, like, the power of Chaplin, is he can be this weird dude and make silly jokes and a lot of physical comedy, and then go to a speech at the drop of a hat that it belongs in the best of dramas, you know?
Yeah, because leading up to that scene, they're switching chairs for like an entire minute where it's just passing the chairs around in a circle.
Yeah. Well, and they're in the car, like he's freaking out because they all think he's Hynkel when he's really the barber. And like Schultz who is a criminal, is like, to them is like, you got to do it. You got to do it. Sit still. And every time they like raise their Hail Hinkler arm, he like flinches and shit.
You're invading Osterlich.
Osterlich, yeah.
You know, I just keep thinking of that. I'm going to paraphrase. I'm not going to exactly say it correctly. If a tree falls in a forest and no one's around to hear it, does it really make a sound? It's kind of how I feel about this speech. Maybe back then it was important. It was great.
What the fuck did you just say?
No one's going to be listening to it now because it's a black and white, boring movie.
Machine man with a machine mind right here, ladies and gentlemen.
I hate to break it to you, but that speech is all over TikTok, just so you know. Like, if you find
Is it really?
Yeah, it's on TikTok. It's on Facebook. People play that all the time. And it's very relevant when you got dipshit in Russia. He's the same fucking guy. He's Hynkel with the bald head and no mustache. Fucking prick. Anyway. It's very relevant.
Today, oh my God.
It'll be relevant until the day we don't have leaders.
Dickwads.
Government officials. Yeah.
Anyway.
Not worth the payoff. You got to wait the whole time. I mean,
not worth the payoff. Unbelievable. Let's get back to the funny stuff. Like, my favorite scene is when they're all digging into the pudding. It's just passing the coin down to Charlie Chaplin the entire time, because it's that comedy where his facial expressions are what sell his comedy, and the way he moves and even the way he like bobs his head a little bit is all very much from the silent film, because that's where he made his name.
Mm-hmm.
But that entire sequence has me dying with laughter.
Mm-hmm.
Because, of course, it's the one old guy who's like, oh, here's the coin. And then Charlie Chaplin just spits out like 7 other coins.
I love when he's like coughing and like a jingle. That, or like, I love the mustard scene when him and the bacteria dude are like, he like loading up his strawberries with the English mustard that's like super spicy. And then he's making fun of him because he's on the couch like writhing in pain and can't speak, and then this dumbass puts it all over his sandwich and takes a bite. That shit's hilarious. Anybody that's taking a bite of spicy brown mustard in the wrong moment, shit hits you right in the back of the throat.
It'll get you. Or red pepper flake on a piece of pizza that just hit that back corner of your throat.
Oh yeah. Or you bite into that son of a bitch just wrong.
No, thank you. Been
Shit
there.
Melt your face. Oh yeah. I also laugh at the audacity that he had. Like, so for example, Hynkel's his storage drawers behind him that you're looking at, it's like, oh look, it's a filing cabinet, and then it opens up into dual-sided like triple mirrors so he can just like look at himself. Like, it's such a like, the statement on the dictators and the leaders is just like the level of narcissism and
vanity is insane.
Yeah, I love it. It's
what caused them to pick
great.
the XX symbol? Like, of all the things that I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice.
It looks like a certain black spider, or close enough that people would be able to see the correlation.
Mm-hmm. To the that symbol. I laugh at the dice on the bacteria. Like, all his stuff is the 7. So it's only good in certain situations.
Yeah. And Jake Oakey, oh my gosh. He comes in, got the Brooklyn accent for bacteria.
He's just shitting on his mom the whole time, or his wife the whole time. Like, oh, it's great. Well, and I love the swap. So like, he comes in and he's doing the full straightened arm, and Hynkel in that moment kind of gets like a little self-conscious at times, and he only does like the little shy raise of his hand stuff. And don't even start it on the red carpet, the train back and forth. Just wait here.
It'll be back.
Oh man.
Oh, and they have their official first official state meeting.
Oh,
and garbage. It was like, I've arranged everything so that you'll be looking down on him. You know, he has to. You're always in the position of power. His little baby chair, and he's just like, I don't feel right.
Yeah. Well, and one of my other favorite parts of this film is like the subtle showing of how people used to treat people like Hynkel, in that they have like moments where they're like, the guy comes in and he's like, we've created the perfect bulletproof suit, because they just want to impress these morons, and they do it in these stupid ways. And he comes in and shoots the guy, and he's like, not good enough, and just walks away.
Needs work.
Yeah. And then the freaking stupid parachute hat, and the guy just falls off, and they like look down. Like, it's just such a parody on how we go, ooh, we got to stay.
I thought we were gonna get like a
relevant.
thud out of that at least. There was no sound. I was waiting for the thud.
Yeah. They just barely had figured out a couple years before how to make sure that the tracks were, the sound was there and good. That's why you're missing some of those better sound effects. But
I mean, but it goes throughout the movie, because you even have the planes they're
yeah.
flying over, and Jake Oakley's like, yeah, those are your planes once they like crash.
Yeah.
Or the light artillery. Oh, that's very
yeah.
light. Because it doesn't make sound going by.
Oh gosh. I love it.
How do you not like this movie,
Yeah,
Mattson?
how do you, we just gotta like, we're gonna have to start doing watch parties with Mattson, so that as me and Alec are just laughing our asses off, he'll at least laugh at us.
I mean, that would make it more funny, because just like Home Alone is funny to me, but it's always funny with people that are laughing with me.
Yeah.
Would I have laughed a little more because you guys are laughing? I'd be like, this isn't even funny. Why are they laughing? But would I laugh? Yeah. And it would make it slightly more enjoyable. Yeah. Watching this movie by myself for 2 hours was boring. This movie's way too long.
I will say, if I am going to critique it at all, the length of the movie, especially in 1941, like that kind of movie, they do drag it out a little bit. And that was truthfully, that's one of the only criticisms I have, and other people have had about Chaplin in the past, is even in silent films, his movies were typically much longer than most, because Chaplin, one thing about Chaplin is he wasn't willing to sacrifice what he felt needed to be in the movies. And you know, to his credit, that's his choice to make. He's the one that wrote them. He's the one that directed them. Most of the movies, because of his production companies, he funded them, he paid for them. It was his choice to make, and so that's why he made movies that he wanted to make, and fuck all everybody else, which is why he ended up banned from both countries that he was living in, because he would tell people like McCarthy, go fuck yourself. You're a dick. Not everybody's a communist. Stop being an asshole. And they would then, you know, target him and say, well, we don't need you here, you stupid artist, go away. And so, to his credit, he was very stubborn, and he put things that were in there. But I will say there are some moments when they draw the gags on a little too long. Like, you probably could have done one less roll with the train, or you could have done, you know, one less repeat joke here and there, and it would have cut back a handful of minutes throughout the film, and still, to me, had the same impact. So 2 hours, it's a little long. However, there are certain gags, though, that just, to me, like, I can watch them a million times. Like when they're on the roof and he's carrying all the shit, and he walks out on that little piece of wood, and he's all confident about it. And the guy's like, don't drop this, immediately drops it. Don't drop this, immediately drops his golf clubs. And I sit there, and every time, and then as soon as he pulls the thing off of his head, he goes into like
Wibble wobble.
I'm going to fall over mode, because he's freaking out. Yeah, I laugh literally out loud every time.
Well, that gets me, because why does he have golf clubs? He just escaped from a labor camp.
Oh, shit.
But he's got his golf clubs.
He's got everything. Like,
Yeah.
he's got like 3 bags, golf clubs, like a hat box. Like, how did he escape? Like,
Right? He had too
is he
much
running
junk.
down the street with that shit like wrapped on his back, and then he's all so pissed off about it. They're being chased by the stormtroopers, and he's like, don't drop my shit.
Oh, I've been meaning to ask, did this inspire George Lucas to call his stormtroopers?
Yes, very much so. But that was always one of Lucas's things with Star Wars was the Empire was always supposed to
Yeah.
remind of that particular regime
Of a certain Reich.
of Hynkel.
Well, yeah, my brother, my middle brother, I have two mid brothers. One of my brothers, in was it junior, senior of high school, whatever government there was some government class we'd take for like U.S. government or something, but they had to base it off of a foreign government. And they took Star Wars and turned it into World War II, and we still have that. I watched it a few years ago, and I was like, it's pretty easy to take a lot of it and just say, yeah, just plug and play.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was very much an influence on Star Wars and a lot of movies actually. Like once he did it, a lot more people were willing to do it. Though they did it, they were never as ballsy as he was. Like even, you have I can't remember his name now off the top of my head, but you have the producers, which made fun of that particular regime. Not nearly as brave about it. Laurel and Hardy did another one too, and I can't think of what it was called. But it was one that made fun of that same regime. But at the same time, again, they didn't lean into it the same way. They just had a dictator with an evil regime. But they weren't ballsy enough like he was to actually dress up like Hynkel and just be like, guess who I am, dickholes. Like that's one of those things where the fact that he was willing to do it, and then the fact that he foresaw that this was going to get much worse, you know what I mean? And the fact that at that time, all these major governments were saying, no, just leave him alone. It'll die down. He'll never. And think if Britain and some of the other allied powers had gotten involved earlier, some of those things may have been thwarted.
We're just repeating history in a lot of aspects. Same old game. No one wants to get into it. Economy's down. Like we're rolling the clock back. Hopefully,
probably because not enough people are watching the old movies that tell those stories. Probably what the problem is.
See, well, that was
well
funny.
played.
I do love history, and I do love World War II, and that's one thing. When the scenery and imagery of this movie, spot on. Did a great job there. I really appreciated that. But I'm a school of history, and I'll just read history and then watch this movie.
Oh.
Or go play the board game Axis and Allies. That's a great game.
Oh my gosh.
It is a great game, but this is a great movie. Hynkel, Charlie Chaplin, what a fucking genius. And the guy, this guy, he's very nepotistic too, because Hannah was played by his wife, and then they were estranged, which he was also very good at, estranging wives. Because he couldn't, I won't go there, but he was quite the philandering dude.
My man.
Good old Chaplin.
Just couldn't keep his dick in one place.
Pretty much.
And he was just like you said, that physical comedy where you just sometimes just got to lean into it and fall flat in your face. He just
he went there. Well, he was just so famous too. Like he was, that guy. There's very few. I mean, he made, what was it? And maybe Alec, you'll know better than me. In 1914, he made like 35 movies in 1 year. Like it was.
He had a really.
I think it was 1914 and then 1915.
35 movies. I guess we don't have to talk though.
And it was, but he also did like a lot of shorts too. Like he did like 35-minute films. And so in 1914, because that's the way a lot of the silent films were at first, as they were in the shorts. And so, but it was something like 25 or 30 some odd movies in 1 year. And
a lot of them like storyline connected with his tramp.
Yes. especially in the early movies. It was The Tramp was everywhere. But I think even in some of the earlier years, he was still putting out dozens, like a dozen to 16 movies a year, and they were all like, people would wait to see the next Chaplin film. So I mean, he was a bloody genius, that guy. He was a genius, especially at the time. And The Tramp was just so funny. Like, the movement, man, it was great. Like, The Pilgrim. Oh God, don't even get me started. The Pilgrim is so funny. Anyway, let's rate this thing, fellas. Let's let Mattson go first so we can end on a positive
Look,
note.
this movie's a 1.
God, you gotta be fucking kidding me. Oh,
you've never given me a choke take before. Jesus.
That was awesome.
I almost squirted tea out of my nose there.
This movie was not peak Fan Master 69. This movie's too long. This movie's in black and white. This movie's a 4.3 aspect ratio, but that's not really why. Like, I'll be honest, like, that I was prepared for it. Didn't bother me. I just like pulling that stuff up. I'm just not some of these gag physical comedy from Charlie Chaplin. Just wasn't my cup of tea. It's not for me. I wasn't intrigued by it. I did appreciate the balls now, having learned a little bit more about the history of Chaplin to make this movie. I mean, kudos to that. I know I ragged on the last speech. Takes a while to get there. It is a good speech. It was just more fun poking fun at these guys, especially Alec, because he is very defensive of this movie. I will watch many other modern movies that are funnier, that just are more compelling to me. I just am not a big fan of this era of cinema, and that's me.
There you go. All right, Alec, rebuttal.
More funnier than this movie?
Yes, Alec.
Wait.
Yes.
Okay, so Mattson said a 1 because of black and white, 4:3 aspect ratio. And
no, that's
it's
not even all that. It's just
Oh
this.
my
It's not
gosh.
funny to me. Like, I wouldn't recommend this movie to Taylor, to my friends, to my family. Like, I'm not going to tell them to watch this because they watch it and be like, why?
Because it's a fucking amazing movie. That's why. This is a motherfucking 5. This is peak Chaplin.
This is a
who
5?
is in his
Oh my
first
God.
speaking role entirely. One of the few actors who is able to successfully move from silent films into talking films because of his stardom, because he was so great. This dude is amazing. Everything he is in, everything he directed was pure motherfucking gold. You're giving this 1. Unbelievable. It is a 5. It is definitely a rewatchable movie, even if you have to skip some of the slow parts. Because even those slow parts are because this is a satire film designed to be making fun of 1.5 people. Oh my gosh, motherfucking 1. 5. 5 people, go watch this film. It's on HBO.
JJ,
I will give you my login.
JJ, you better have some sense here.
Oh, you're not going to like my rating. I'm not going to give it a 5. But look, I love Chaplin. I think Chaplin was a genius. I think, and look, I've bagged on a couple of old films because Alec, I don't have the same love for old cinema that Alec does. Casey does. There's nothing old cinema that she doesn't love, because she looks at them as timeless and classic. And we've talked about them in some of the old ones before. The dialogue, the stories, in my opinion, are much more thought out and well done than even most of the modern movies that we have today. Which is one of my biggest gripes with most modern movies, is regurgitated stories and bullshit. But anyway, I'm with Alec though. This is peak Chaplin. If you were to ask me, there's 2 films that I think of when somebody says Chaplin. Technically, there's 3. I think of the Robert Downey Jr. one because it's very good. Tells a great story. It's dark, it's heavy, but it's very, very good. The other 2 that I think of are The Pilgrim and this one, because those to me are the 2 that really stand out as films that I can watch over and over again, regardless of the fact that they're old cinema. They still, even though they're talkies, as they called them back then, they're not nearly what, the talking cinema was even back then. It was very minimal. And a lot of the gags still have to do with like the silent film like this one, where a lot of it's the physical comedy. It's the things that you have to interpret. Why is he doing this? Or man, the physicality of it is very interesting. So I never get tired of this one because the satire and the way that it's directed, I think, is so relevant no matter what, because there's always going to be tyrants in the world. There's always going to be leaders of nations that overshoot what they really should be trying to do due to narcissism and due to their vanity and the fact that they think that they're better than everyone else, and then they want control. And so I think that this satire will always be relevant because we're always going to have issues with people like Hynkel. So they might look a little different than they did back then, but as we've seen recently, it's not, they're still there. With that, I'm giving it a 4.5. I do think it's a little long. I do think it's, I think this is true of almost all Chaplin's outside of his shorts. And that is, he put in films what he wanted to have in films, regardless of whether it added value to everyone or if it, I think a lot of his, especially the talking films later on, could have been streamlined a little bit. But at the end of the day,
apparently everything he made was gold.
Well,
yeah, it was Mattson.
Yeah, it was good. I'm just saying it was a little long, and I don't know that I would ever. I don't know. The Pilgrim's a little long too, so they're a little long. There's a lot of editing that could have happened, and that comes from Chaplin, some of his pride and narcissism at that point, and but he had earned the right to do that by writing and directing and funding almost all of his films too. So look, what am I going to say? You paid for it, fucking put it in there. It's kind of like us watching Pink Flamingos. We were paid for it, so I'm going to watch that shit. There it is. So yeah, 4.5 for me. I think it's hilarious. I think it's great. I think it's relevant. And it's got one of the greatest speeches, even though Roger Ebert said it wasn't. And that guy can eat a dick because I don't give a shit what you think, fat man. I guess not fat man anymore, but he used to be. Anyway, with that, there it is. The Great Dictator. Always fun, these old movies. Being somewhat of a mediator in between these two wackadoos in the middle of it.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, that's about what I figured it would be, was around there.
Help us all.
With that, Alec, tell everybody where they can find this, buddy.
I would love to, JJ. Thank you for tuning into our review of The Great Dictator, starring the GOAT of acting, Charles Chaplin himself, which makes him on par with our favorite listener, the man, the myth, the legend, Charles. I don't know his last name. Well, JJ and my favorite listener, not Mattson's. If you are a fan of the pod and want to support us directly, check us out on Patreon, where you can have some laughs and enjoy a more personal relationship with us. Special thanks to our current patron, Ginger Appreciation Society. Mattson appreciates you. Check us out wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Stitcher, Ghana, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, where you can see our smiling faces and watch Mattson roll his eyes during my outro. And without further ado, I will send it back to the Mammoth of Mall, the Maharaja of MASH, JJ.
JJ, I gotta take over a second. Charles, appreciate it. This is today. Thank you, because I know you picked this movie for us to watch, but you know what? Today, thank you.
It's hilarious. All right, and thank you for the kind nicknames. I love sharing nicknames with the great Babe Ruth.
Oh, absolutely.
He was a fat alcoholic too, so it works. With that, as always, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Cinemagic out.
Bye.
Whoa!